My name is Emma Parker. I'm 25 years old, and on the morning of my wedding, my mother called to tell me that she and my father weren't coming. At first I thought she was joking. Guests were already arriving, flowers had been delivered, and everything was finally coming together. Then Mom said the words that changed everything. "Your sister needs us today." I froze. "What are you talking about?" "Olivia called. Tyler has his school awards ceremony." I stared at the mirror. Today was my wedding, and my parents were choosing an elementary school event instead. I waited for an explanation. None came. "We promised Tyler we'd be there," Mom said. "You promised me first." Silence. Then I heard Olivia's voice in the background. Immediately I understood. Once again, everything was about her. My entire life had followed the same pattern. Whenever Olivia needed help, Mom and Dad rushed to her side. Whenever she had a problem, they solved it. And whenever I needed something, I was expected to understand. I was the responsible daughter, the easy daughter, the daughter who always adjusted. Standing there in my wedding dress, I realized I was being asked to do it again. "Did Dad agree to this?" I asked. Mom hesitated. That was answer enough. The man who once promised to walk me down the aisle had decided to be somewhere else. Finally, I said the only thing I could. "Okay." Mom sounded relieved. "We'll celebrate another time." Another time. Not today. Not my wedding day. After the call ended, I stood silently staring at my reflection. A lifetime of being second suddenly replayed in my mind. Then Ryan, my fiancé, walked into the room. One look at my face and his smile disappeared. "What happened?" "My parents aren't coming." His expression hardened. "They're making a mistake." I wanted to believe that, but this wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. As I tried to pull myself together, my eyes drifted toward a small ring of old brass keys sitting inside my purse. Keys my father had given me nearly 2 years earlier. Keys connected to a responsibility nobody else in the family knew I carried. For a moment I stared at them, because my parents thought they were missing a wedding. What they didn't know was that before this day ended, I was finally going to hand those keys back, and when I did, nothing in our family would ever be the same again. If you had asked my parents which daughter they could always depend on, the answer would have been me, not because I was their favorite, because I was the reliable one. 2 years before my wedding, Dad suffered a mild heart attack. Thankfully, he recovered, but after that, a lot of family responsibilities needed attention. Bills, insurance paperwork, property maintenance, repairs. Without anyone officially asking, most of those responsibilities slowly became mine. At first, I didn't mind. He was my father. I wanted to help. But as months passed, helping stopped feeling temporary. It became expected. Meanwhile, Olivia's life remained exactly the same. Whenever she needed money, support, or attention, Mom and Dad immediately stepped in. Whenever Mom and Dad needed something, they called me. One afternoon, Dad handed me a ring of old brass keys. "The property keys," he said. I looked surprised. "Why me?" He smiled. "Because you're the one I trust." Those words stayed with me. From that day forward, I handled almost everything connected to the family property: repairs, insurance, utility accounts, contractors, whatever needed attention. Dad trusted me with responsibility. But somehow Olivia still received all the attention. That was the part that hurt. Not the work, the difference. I was the daughter people depended on. Olivia was the daughter people protected. A few days before my wedding, that difference became impossible to ignore. I was helping at the farmhouse when Olivia showed up. She was unusually cheerful, which usually meant she wanted something. A few minutes later, she proved me right. "I need a favor," she said. Then she casually asked for $6,000. I stared at her. Before I could even respond, Mom and Dad immediately started discussing ways to help her, as if her latest problem had automatically become everyone's responsibility. Sitting there, listening to the conversation, I realized something. 3 days before my wedding, they weren't talking about me. They weren't talking about my future. They weren't talking about the biggest moment of my life. They were talking about Olivia. Again. For the first time, I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I simply smiled and said, "I'll think about it." Everyone looked relieved. But none of them realized something inside me had started to change. Because for the first time in my life, I was getting tired of carrying responsibilities while someone else received all the love. 3 days before my wedding, I drove to the family farmhouse looking for paperwork Dad needed. The house was quiet. While searching through the office, I opened a drawer and found a brown envelope with my name written across the front. Curious, I opened it. Inside were legal documents prepared shortly after Dad's heart attack. As I read through them, my heart began racing. The papers revealed something I had never known. Dad had officially appointed me to oversee nearly every major responsibility connected to the family property: maintenance, insurance, repairs, financial oversight, contract approvals, everything. Suddenly, the keys he had given me years earlier made sense. He hadn't simply asked me for help. He had trusted me with responsibilities nobody else in the family carried. Near the back of the envelope was a letter Dad had written but never given to me. The message was short. "Emma, you've always stepped up when people needed you. I've trusted you with this place because you've earned it, not because you're obligated to carry it. Remember that. Nothing belongs to a person just because they're willing to suffer for it. Dad." I read those words several times. For years, the more responsibility I accepted, the more people expected from me. Somewhere along the way, carrying everyone else's burdens had become normal. A little later, Dad, Mom, and Olivia returned to the farmhouse. Not long after, Olivia revealed the real reason she had come. She needed money. Again. And almost immediately, Mom and Dad started discussing ways I could help. As I sat there listening, everything suddenly became clear. Dad trusted me with responsibility, but Olivia always received the attention. For the first time, I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I simply smiled and said, "I'll think about it." Everyone looked relieved, but they had no idea what had changed. Because after finding that envelope, I finally understood my role in this family. And for the first time in my life, I started wondering what would happen if I stopped carrying it. The next morning, Dad called. The moment I heard his voice, I knew the conversation was about Olivia. "Emma, your sister is having a hard time right now." I stayed quiet. Then he finally said it. "Your mother and I think you should postpone your honeymoon and help Olivia financially." For a moment, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My wedding was only days away, and somehow, once again, everything was about Olivia. I took a slow breath. What about me? Dad didn't answer. What about my wedding? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. In that moment, I finally understood the difference between Olivia and me. She was the daughter they protected. I was the daughter they depended on. After the call ended, I sat alone thinking about everything that had happened. The missed priorities, the sacrifices, the years of responsibility, and the envelope I had found at the farmhouse. For the first time, I stopped asking myself how to help everyone else, and started asking what was best for me. That afternoon, I gathered every document I had been managing for Dad: property records, insurance information, utility accounts, contractor contacts, maintenance schedules, everything. Then I placed the old brass keys on top of the packet. Looking at them, I felt something unexpected: relief. For years, those responsibilities had quietly followed me everywhere. Now, for the first time, I was ready to let them go. I had finally made a decision. My wedding wasn't going to be the day I lost my family. It was going to be the day I stopped carrying them. And less than 48 hours later, Dad would finally discover exactly what that meant. My wedding day arrived, and my parents never came. That morning I checked my phone one last time. No apology, no explanation, nothing. The only thing I saw were photos Olivia had posted from Tyler's school awards ceremony. Dad was standing beside her, smiling. That hurt more than I expected. Not because he wasn't at my wedding, because he looked perfectly happy about where he was instead. For a moment, I let myself feel the disappointment. Then I put the phone away. I wasn't going to let their choice ruin my day. The ceremony was beautiful. Friends, neighbors, and people who genuinely cared about me filled the seats. When it was time to walk down the aisle, Dad wasn't there. Instead, Mr. Collins, a family friend who had known me since childhood, offered his arm. And together we walked toward Ryan. The ceremony was simple, honest, perfect. For the first time all week, I stopped thinking about who wasn't there and focused on who was. After the ceremony, during the reception, I stepped outside and opened the email I had prepared days earlier. Attached were every account, document, and responsibility I had managed for Dad over the last 2 years. At the top was a short note. Dad, for 2 years I've handled these responsibilities because I loved you. Now it's time to hand them back. Everything you need is attached. The keys are being mailed tomorrow. I think it's time we both learn what life looks like without me carrying it. Love, Emma. I read it one final time, then I pressed send. Just like that, it was over. No argument, no confrontation, no drama, only a quiet decision. For the first time in years, I felt free. When I returned to the reception, Ryan immediately noticed something different. What happened? He asked. I smiled. Nothing. But something had happened. For the first time in my life, I had chosen myself. Later that evening, my phone began vibrating. Dad. Then another call, and another. Then a text. Emma, call me, please. For the first time in years, Dad sounded desperate, but for the first time in years, I wasn't rushing to rescue him. I didn't call Dad back that night, not because I wanted revenge. I simply wanted one day that belonged to me. One day without fixing someone else's problems. The next morning, I woke up to several missed calls and messages from Dad. Eventually, I called him back. He answered immediately. Emma. His voice sounded exhausted. You got the email, I said. A long silence followed. Then he quietly admitted something I never expected to hear. I didn't realize how much you were doing. For years, that was all I had wanted, for someone to notice, for someone to understand. You never asked, I replied. Another silence. Then came the words that mattered most. You were right. My father had never said that to me before. I should have been at your wedding. My throat tightened. For the first time, there were no excuses, no explanations, only regret. A week later, Dad came to visit me alone. He brought a framed photo from my wedding. Looking at the picture, he shook his head. I missed it. I nodded. Yes, you did. For the next 2 hours, we talked more honestly than we ever had before. Dad admitted something painful. Whenever Olivia created pressure, he gave in. Whenever I sacrificed, he simply expected more. Not because he loved me less, because he believed I could handle it. My strength had become the reason I was overlooked. Mom eventually apologized too. Not perfectly, but sincerely enough for me to know she understood. Olivia never apologized, and honestly, I stopped waiting for one. Over the following months, something surprising happened. Without me managing everything, the family adjusted. Dad learned to handle responsibilities himself. Mom realized how much work had been falling on me, and Olivia discovered that people weren't always going to solve her problems. The family didn't fall apart. The world didn't end. The only thing that changed was that I stopped carrying everyone else's burdens. 6 months later, Dad came over for dinner. As he was leaving, he paused at the door and smiled. "You seem happier." I thought about it for a moment, then smiled back. Because he was right. I was happier. Not because my family had changed completely, but because I had changed. For the first time in my life, I stopped measuring my worth by what I could do for everyone else, and started building a life that belonged to me. That evening, Ryan wrapped his arm around my shoulders as we watched the sunset together. The keys were gone. The responsibility was gone. The guilt was gone. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt free. Because the day I handed Dad those keys back wasn't the day I abandoned my family. It was the day I finally stopped abandoning myself.